welcome everyone. So you all, I'm sure, know our state senator, and even if you're in White Rock, he's the one who keeps us together. I won't say any more about that. Anyway, so Leo is going to talk, and I'm going to get off for just a second so I can see if I can get Joyce back on, because you know how good I am at these computer things. So I think we're all set. And if we can, you want to just save the questions, Leo, until the end? And then
sure, if you don't mind.
This is a small group, so they can just raise their hand and we can do it that way.
So Carol Ann, before you jump off, I just want to thank you and the rest of the League of Women's Voters for that beautiful card that was sent. As you know, I was originally scheduled to meet with you last month, but an aunt who raised us as a second mother passed away, and having your comforting words and card meant so much to me. And I want to thank all of you for that, because we truly think of community as family. And so to have you with me in spirit, and even by just the words on your card, meant the world to me. Thank you.
You mean the world to us too, so that's why we're all together. So I'm going to get off, everyone.
Sure.
Leo, I'm going to let you go ahead, and I'm going to mute myself so I can talk to Joyce, okay?
Okay. So I hope everybody is doing well this afternoon. I'm excited to meet you. You're going to be seeing my headshot versus me on camera. I'm taking my lunch break in my truck on laboratory property. And as you know, I can't have access to video or photos while on lab property. So you're going to see that headshot. And so last month, I wanted to give you an update, and I know you've probably heard so many updates about what happened during the legislative session. And I thought I would share with you how things went for me, what my priorities was, and what I got accomplished during the 60-day session. And so not too sure if many of you showed up to the League of Women Voters event that happened last year leading up to the session, where we were talking about our priorities. And it might have been in January, actually. It was January at Fuller Lodge where we started to talk about our legislative priorities, and we being Representative Chandler and Senator Bobby Gonzalez, who represents part of Los Alamos County. He's on the White Rock side. And I told you during that time that one of my major initiatives is going to be ensuring that students kindergarten through 12th grade were given free, healthy lunches and breakfasts. That was one of my priorities. And the second priority was dealing with catalytic converter theft and getting something into the laws on ensuring that we could use that as both an enforceable law and a deterrent for those who wanted to continue to steal catalytic converters and make a profit off of their theft. And so that main goal of ensuring that every K-12 student qualified for free breakfast and lunch became a reality. And so as a student who qualified for free meals in the Española public schools, as a former educator, I taught in Belen. I witnessed firsthand how hunger affects learning. And as the son of a retired public school cook who took pride in feeding hundreds of students, it was an honor to co-sponsor this bill, the Healthy Universal Schools Meals Act. I know that you've seen it on the news. You've read about it in the paper. That's Senate Bill 4. And that bill passed through both chambers unanimously and was signed by Governor Lujan Grisham at Piñon Elementary School in Santa Fe. Now, there was a student who was standing next to me who was so excited about the bill being signed. The excitement was in the cafeteria, and he said, "This means everyone gets to eat for free." And I said, "That's exactly what this means." And the kids shouted out loud, "Everyone can eat for free." And the kids started to clap. It's really exciting to work on a bill that, you know, is going to have not only an impact within our Senate district, not only right here in Los Alamos, but throughout the state of New Mexico. And so we worked on this bill, or I worked on this bill alongside the majority whip, Senator Michael Padilla out of Albuquerque, and Kendall Chavez, who's the governor's food and hunger specialist. So she helps find anything from identifying food insecurity in colleges and universities in the state of New Mexico to even food insecurity in public schools. And so, as all of us know, or even if you don't know, children need nutrients so that they can grow, develop, and focus on their learning instead of thinking of the food that they need. And as a school teacher, I can remember so many times students wouldn't concentrate leading up to that lunch hour because they were so hungry. So instead of really focusing on an exam, they'd be looking at the clock to see how many minutes were left before the bell rang and they could have their lunch. This bill is a major win for every student, parent, and educator, as well as, believe it or not, local food producers in New Mexico. This is going to allow schools the flexibility to work with local farmers to bring in fresh produce for those students. I know that the governor's office, Kendall, is working on seeing how to get surveys out to schools. Schools will get to hear from their students on the types of foods that they would like to see, the type of foods that they like. And a lot of this will also be cultural driven. So any type of cultural foods, let's just say, for example, schools with Pueblos in the area might want to have something that's has a Pueblo twist to it. Let's just say, for example, I want to say a healthy version of a Navajo taco, right, on a bed of greens. So students will be able to get to talk about the type of foods that they'd like to see and what they'd want to see served. So there were several bills I was happy to sponsor and co-sponsor, which made their way to the governor's desk, and I'm going to share those with you. Teamed up with 4 young women from Albuquerque Academy who, on their own, worked with their private school on ensuring that there were menstrual products in every elementary, middle, and high school at Albuquerque Academy. And it was a success. These 4 young women said that they walked into an elementary restroom one day, and the elementary students had written notes to them on stickies and pasted them all on the mirror, thanking them for what they did, for eliminating any type of shame for asking for these products. It was just a big win for menstruators in the school. And so these 4 young women asked if I would help carry the Menstrual Products in School Bathrooms Act bill. They knew I had coached cheerleading for 15 years. They knew I had worked with student athletes for a long time and knew my experience as an educator, and asked if I felt comfortable carrying the bill on the Senate side, which I did. And that bill passed. And what this bill does is it provides free menstrual hygiene products in elementary, middle, and high school restrooms throughout the state of New Mexico. And so that's a major win if you think about period poverty, right? These products aren't very cheap. If you think of rural New Mexicans who might not be able to afford them because of the price, or if you think of rural New Mexicans whose best option on getting menstrual hygiene products would be the local general store or Family Dollar that closes at 7:30 or 8 p.m. and the student athlete is, or the menstruator is home after that, there's no place in their community to get it. This allows students to even take a couple of products home if they need to help them get through that night, or what they need to get through, even if it's a few days if need be. I was also the sponsor of the Law Enforcement Fund Distribution. Now, that started off as Senate Bill 288, but then got put into the budget bill. And so that's a big win. So it was rolled into the General Appropriations Fund and will give law enforcement $100 million more for the recruitment and retention of police officers across the state of New Mexico. So a lot of people were saying we're losing our police officers because it's a risky job, but the pay is not great. Or we're losing some who are about to retire, but still have several years left in them to give back to the department. This retention fund will help those departments keep those police officers. In addition to recruiting new people in, it'll be able to get us more officers on the streets to try to keep New Mexicans safe. I teamed up with Senator Duhigg out of Albuquerque for the Election Changes Act. Now, what this legislation does is it modernizes election security and administration in New Mexico by making updates to the election code. Now, this bill focused primarily on provisions to aid election administration, in the efficient conduct of elections. The bill provides measures to secure sensitive voter data and increases compensation for election workers. And there's other pieces to it, but those are some major pieces of what this does. It also helps for those people running in office. We saw recently that there was an individual in Albuquerque who shot at a few homes of elected officials. This bill will also make home addresses of public officials confidential on election related and campaign reporting documents. So that way they can't be targeted. This helps every elected official. And so that was a big win. We talked about, when I started this meeting, about the catalytic converters sale bill I wanted to make a priority. That became a reality. That was Senate Bill 133. This is the Catalytic Converter Sales Record Act. Now, what this does is secondhand metal buyers will have to make a record of transactions when buying a catalytic converter. And this includes getting the seller's ID and proof of ownership of the vehicle. And this law will help catch people who are selling stolen catalytic converters and lower the amount of thefts. So I'm hoping that this bill will serve as a deterrent for those who think they can make a quick buck off of catalytic converters. Now, my good friend, Representative Chandler, right? I always say love going to the Roundhouse with two of my very best friends, which are Representative Chandler of right here of Los Alamos and Representative Herrera of Dixon. These two representatives are amazing women, strong champions for Northern New Mexico, and I'm proud to serve with them, and I call them my best friends in the Roundhouse. And so Representative Chandler and I teamed up on two bills. One was the no publication required for name changes. That was House Bill 31. Now, this bill meant a lot to the LGBTQ plus community. And so what it does is it protects the safety and privacies of New Mexicans seeking to legally change their names. Why is this a big deal for the LGBTQ plus community? Well, if we think about our trans brothers and sisters, so trans individuals who would like to live their life not in the sex they were born into, but are going to change their life into who they know they are, who they are as a person. Right? The way the law was written in 1889 is you had to submit your original name and publish it in the newspaper with your name change. This will protect individuals from being outed in their community, but this also helps women who are leaving abusive relationships. So any woman who has faced domestic violence and has fled and is trying to change her name, she won't have to publish her original name and the name change in the paper. That would make that an easy target to find this individual. The representative and I teamed up on House Bill 287. Now, this was an idea from right here in Los Alamos to bring about a driver safety awareness license plate. And so it's a special license plate to support the driver safety awareness, to remind drivers to look twice for motorcycles. Major focus on motorcycle awareness. And that was something major that there's a lab group who have a motorcycle group. They're a strong force. They came up with the idea of the bill, and I was happy as not only the Los Alamos senator, but a lab employee to carry this bill on their behalf. Now, I don't know if you know that aside from legislation, we're also tasked at sending out both junior money and capital outlay funds to our districts. And if you think about it, I get $2 million. Seems like a lot of money to do a lot of great projects, but the average request comes in at 39 million from throughout Senate District 5. So 2 million is really just a drop in a bucket based on the needs that people are saying need to be addressed within the Senate District. And so and it was actually 4.1 million in capital outlay projects. And so I helped fund some acequias, land grants. The major one in Los Alamos was water infrastructure, education, helping with UNMLA, roads, public safety, worked on funding projects centered around culture, heritage, and wildlife. So 500,000 of my money went to the Pajarito water project on the ski hill. What's happening is because the drought has been so bad, retention ponds on the ski hill have dried up. that's a major threat, right? We don't have water that's piped up to the ski hill. If there's another fire that were to come, the ponds are dry with no water that's going up. This is going to help us to get that water project to ensure that water is pumped from town site up onto the ski hill. More than 150,000 of my junior funds and capital outlay was sent to UNM Los Alamos. They needed help with some roof repair, and I think that they also needed, if I can recall, a small tractor to help with snow removal. And I was so proud to send $75,000 to help fund the Los Alamos High School robotics team. They place all the time right here nationally, and they've even placed on the international stage. And so this is going to help them on getting some updated equipment. Now, if you haven't talked to them, you should chat with them and their mentor. They have a really cool plan on how they plan to engage other schools, not only in northern New Mexico, to serve as peer mentors and their mentors serving as advisor mentors. They really want to see how they can help increase the excitement of STEM education throughout northern and the entire state of New Mexico. So much fun happened, believe it or not, during the session. I was able to play at the Hoops for Hope basketball fundraiser. We raised more than $30,000 for UNM cancer patients. And so I did dual duty. I played defense and I cheered on the sideline. Those of you know that I cheered at UNM. And so any chance I get to yell in a megaphone, I'll take that up. I was able to meet with 14 members of the Los Alamos High School Native American Culture Club who participated in American Indian Day. I hosted Los Alamos leaders in the Senate chamber for the Los Alamos County Day. It was the first time the county came back to the Roundhouse for an official Los Alamos Day in several years. And I met with students, parents, and teachers from Chamisa Elementary School. They're part of the Global Warming Express. They're a group of students who are bringing attention to global warming and the threat of climate change. And so that's what I have. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have and chat about anything you want to chat about. One thing I'm sorry that I didn't get to do is the week my aunt passed away was the week I was going to meet with you. I was scheduled to run with the Special Olympians. I've been walking and jogging for a year because I made a promise to the Olympians that I would run the torch with them. And unfortunately, my aunt passed away. And so I will be with them next year. And I was with them in spirit this year.
Thank you, Leo. You know, if you want to ask Leo a question, why don't you just A, unmute yourself, and B, maybe your picture, and then just ask your question. I think that might be just easier. Does anyone have a particular question?
I have one.
Lynn, go ahead.
The catalytic converter law is already in effect, or does it have a start date?
So the governor was signing it to have an emergency clause, which means it would go into effect immediately.
Thank you.
Hey, and I want to thank somebody from Los Alamos corrected me last time at Fuller Lodge. I thought that electric vehicles also had the catalytic converter. And so they were so gracious not to call me out in front of the whole group at Fuller Lodge, but sent me a nice email with information about catalytic converters and how they're not on electric vehicles, which saved me embarrassment on the Senate floor. So whoever's watching, if it was you, I am so thankful for you.
That was not nice. Anyone else have some questions?
Do you have questions like, when's my birthday? What's my favorite color? What's for lunch?
What's for lunch? I know. If you'd been in person, we would have had lunch. I will say
we
that.
We would have.
We've actually had a difficult time with the lunch thing, but that's another story. Bob.
Yeah, I was curious as to what the state of being able to recruit more police officers, devoting more money to it is a great thing. But what's the state of people willing to take on that job? I hear it's harder to find people. What's your word?
Yep. So what I've told Chief Robinson with the New Mexico State Police is I would circle back after 6 months to see what the recruitment strategy was, because he can help oversee even those municipalities and tell me if they're seeing a success rate, and if so, what the key components are to that strategy that's helping them recruit new law enforcement officers. So it's going to be interesting when I meet back with him to see what their strategy's been and what their success rate is. So it's too early now to see what the success rate would be.
So I guess I have the same sort of question about poll workers.
Mm-hmm. So poll workers will have to see right after the next election, because it hasn't taken effect yet, if we're seeing the compensation will increase the number of people who want to help at polls. Hey, have you ever worked at a poll, Bob?
Yes.
Well, I did it a few times and I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much work went into being the poll worker.
Yeah, I was a worker once and a judge once, and so that's all.
So you know firsthand, Bob, I hope that this enticement of a little bit more money can get you to come back and work the poll or judge it again.
It all helps.
I'm counting on you, Bob.
Okay.
There are more questions? Well, Susie Haberman, Counselor Haberman. Can't
Hi there.
see you, but we hear you.
Yeah, I don't know. I undid my video thing. Beats me. I'm sorry. But hi, and thanks for being here. And I'm sorry I was late. I had two questions. One is
Sure.
related to the catalytic converter conversation, because that's what I came in the middle of. And at first I thought maybe you were talking about kind of the high theft rate of catalytic converters across our community, state, and nation, really.
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe you're talking more about there was legislation passed to require them to
Yes.
hopefully for the goal of reducing carbon emissions.
Yeah, so it's going to be, so what's going to happen is this bill will serve as both a deterrent and will actually go after those who are trying to make quick money off of a catalytic converter they stole. So this bill, the Catalytic Converter Sales Record Act, is a bill that I ran with the majority pro tem, or the Senate pro tem, Mimi Stewart out of Albuquerque. And what this bill does, it's Senate Bill 133, is secondhand metal buyers need to make sure they have a record of the transaction when buying a catalytic converter. So it includes the seller's ID and proof of ownership of the vehicle. And so this will help law enforcement catch people who are selling stolen catalytic converters. And as the deterrent, we're hoping it lowers the amount of thefts.
Okay, so it is what I formerly thought. I mean, that's good. And I had read about that, but thanks for the details. But I guess I'm also hoping, could there ever be an opportunity to require catalytic converters on gasoline?
Yes, that's
like
actually
California, other places. I just returned from a big road trip up to Glacier and Yellowstone, and every time, I lived in California for a long time, so I just didn't see stuff spewing out of, tailpipes.
Yep.
So anyways, I'll let you answer. Sorry.
Yep. No, that's okay. And thank you for joining, Counselor. So every vehicle that's not electric, right, a gas vehicles do have a catalytic converter. So the bill would have to be stricter on emission, right? So emission tests, but that's something we could definitely look into, because we do know the car has the catalytic converter since it's moving down the highway, but we'd have to work on stricter emission test requirements to keep those vehicles on the road. But thank you for that. I took note of that, and that's something I can look into.
Exactly. Thank you. And then
no problem.
My second question, unrelated, when you and Representative Chandler presented kind of a session recap, Chamber of Commerce breakfast meeting, I think it was, there was conversation about some bills and legislation that didn't move forward, and either you or Representative Chandler said maybe it was because some of the bills were not written very well.
Yes.
And therefore they were potentially going to, it's kind of like maybe have unintended consequences, was my read on it.
Yeah.
So is there a kind of an effort or a way to help our legislators be better bill writers so we can have more success?
So here's what happens. Our bills are drafted by individuals whose sole job is to write the bill. So the legislator, and let's just say, for example, you with your example of emissions, you meet with me, we talk about wanting to get stricter laws on emissions. We chat about what that looks like. Is it who controls it? What's the rate going to be? We come up with our parameters of the bill. We would then send that to a bill drafter, and the bill drafter would write the bill you and I would circle back and look at it and see if that was what we intended, and then we'd move forward. So the major issue isn't too much of us having the legislators write the bill, but it's that we lost a large number of bill drafters in the state of New Mexico. So either they retired or they decided to pursue a different career. We're hopeful that after this first 60-day session that we just passed, that next year and the years that follow, these new bill drafters will be getting better at their job and at drafting the legislation. It's just we just had a high turnover rate and so many new drafters that came in, and not every bill drafter position was filled. So we had a number of bills coming to these drafters and not enough drafters to write the bill.
Okay. Is that a position that is year-round full-time, or is it just kind of part-time casual during the session?
It's to my understanding that there's both. It's my understanding that there's some that are on staff full-time that work through the legal side of the operations at the Roundhouse. And then there's those that come in seasonal during session and leading up to session.
Okay, because there's lots of people whose names are on this screen who are outstanding writers.
We could use them. So,
okay.
Carol Ann, I should send you the email address of Raul Barciaga, who's the individual in charge of bill drafters, and I'd be happy to send that over, and maybe you can send it out to the group.
Certainly, we can send that out as a reminder of people. We do have everybody's on this email list. So
Perfect.
Absolutely. That would be great. Thank you, Leah.
No problem. Thank you.
So do you want to do Jody and then Becky? Okay. Jody, okay.
This is Jody Benson. And first of all, thank you so much for the menstrual products and bathrooms bill. That is amazing. It was hard to get through, who knows why, but we're really, really grateful for it, all of us females and other genders too. Then thank you also for the lunches, the school lunches, and I'm really appreciating the issue that they can go to the local farmers and have the local farmers help out. And my issue is today, I've been hearing from parents about the loss of their child or children to fentanyl. What is happening with fentanyl? Even here in Los Alamos, we're losing neighbors and children to fentanyl.
Isn't that this? Well, first of all, thank you for thanking me. And that means so much to me. And fentanyl has become a major issue everywhere. Now, Amy Story, all of us know Amy Story, found a law in another state that clearly targets fentanyl, and it works on both the education component for elementary, middle, and high schoolers, and then it works on addressing the dire need of combating fentanyl. She and I are going to work during this interim. We're going to look at that bill together. We're going to meet with Representative Chandler. We're both really wanting to look at the bill and seeing how we can carry it. Now, what's tricky is during a short session, which is going to be coming up in 2024, a short legislative session is budget-based. So not many big bills will make it through that aren't related to the budget. So I think that in 2025 is when this bill is going to have to come through, unless we can convince the governor that it's one that she'll put on her call. But Representative Chandler and I are going to meet with Amy Story. We're going to dissect the bill from the other state that she found, and we're going to see how we can tailor it to New Mexico so that we can get something on the books here.
Oh, thank you. Because this is, even here in Los Alamos, we're having so many deaths. And we're even having training, and I forgot what the name of that, Narcan. We had Narcan training. And that's very important, but does that even work? Excuse me.
So Narcan will work if you have an overdose to bring them back, but it's not something that you'd use all the time. It's just when you find yourself in the dire need to save somebody, that Narcan will get them while they're overdosing to come to and come back. But that's not an answer, right? That's just a little Band-Aid on a major issue that we're all facing as New Mexicans and as a country.
Thank you.
Let me tell you a quick story that's really scary. And so the other day, I'm at Guadalupe Bank in a parking lot, and I see a man that seems intoxicated take off his hoodie sweatshirt. He rolls it up and he lays on it as if though it's a pillow. It's a hot day. His friend wakes him up, helps him put his hoodie back on, which I'm thinking, oh my God, it is way too hot for that hoodie. I decide to watch for a while. The man then falls over in the parking lot, isn't responsive, doesn't move. His friend is trying to wake him up, and his friend walks away. I then think I need to go and check on this man. I check, I call 911. 911 asks if I can check for a pulse. I don't feel a pulse. And so what was really scary is then they asked, can you get your knuckles and rub really hard on his sternum under his hoodie? And so I did that twice. The man revived and popped up, and the words out of his mouth were, call an ambulance. And so an ambulance came, but the EMTs who arrived after they took him away said that this is something that's becoming the norm throughout New Mexico on people who are taking too much of a substance. And it's just amazing that so much happens and that there's not too much that's being done in regards to laws on the book.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
I'm going to have Becky and, okay, yeah. Becky Shanklin and then Maura.
Okay, am I unmuted? Yeah, I think I am.
No, you're not, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So yes, thank you for all your good work. And I think what I appreciate the most is you're speaking so much for people who don't have voices.
Oh,
and
thank you.
who don't know how to talk about all these things. You know, we talk too much, but that's we feel comfortable, but you take the positions for so many people who are voiceless. Okay, that's my thank you. Now, I think one of the horrible things about the New Mexico legislature is that we're still functioning under the laws and restrictions of the original Constitution. So you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Modernization.
Legislative session and legislative pay, which also I think is under the same shadow of, well, do we really like legislators? So I'm just wondering, when are we ever going to get a reasonable length of session where you people can do your work and get it done without, never mind, you know what I'm saying.
I
So
know what you mean.
tell us what's needed and how close are we? We're closer than we used to be. So go ahead.
Yes.
I'll
So
be quiet.
I became the poster senator when it came to modernization of the Senate for two reasons. One, I've told all of you that I come from very humble beginnings. So it's not that I can call my mom and say, Mom, even at this age, I'm going to be taking off for the session. And she's somebody who can say, let me help you, right? That can't happen. So I was able to share my story about being still a part-time laboratory employee during the session. If I didn't have my part-time employment at Lanel with that flexible schedule, Rebecca, I'd be responsible for paying over $1,000 a month to keep my health benefits. And I can't afford that, right? I'm already taking a huge cut. If Lanel wouldn't allow me to work those 20 hours a week any way that I can fit them in, I would have a double whammy. I wouldn't be bringing in some sort of income, and I wouldn't have any type of benefit without me paying over $1,000 a month. I shared the story with senators. I shared it with representatives. Now on the House side, they moved that bill quick. On the Senate side, it stalled out. And so I think it's going to take some more of constituents within different Senate districts to talk about the need of modernizing the legislators, not only to pay us, but to also extend the amount of time that we spend together on passing vital bills for the state of New Mexico. I did hear that some of the concerns of some senators were, if we open up the race as paid legislators, do we then run the risk of so many people are running not for the right reason, but just to bring in some sort of income? I then countered that with, well, we're silencing the voice of so many New Mexicans who have so much to offer, but can't afford to miss work for 3 months or 1 month out of the year to get the work of the people done. So it's going to really turn to constituents in Senate districts of senators who aren't fully on board yet, on them putting a little bit of pressure on their elected official to join in wanting to modernize the New Mexico legislature.
And what about the length of sessions?
So I think that's going to go hand in hand. I think when that bill's drafted, because it's one that's going to have a constitutional amendment, I
Right.
think that when both the House and the Senate look at this type of bill, they're going to go for both rather than piecing it in two different pieces of constitutional amendments. I think it's going to have to be a package that will move forward rather than just one versus the other.
Okay. Thank
Hey,
you.
Rebecca, when you talked about voices of people who don't really speak up, it was amazing the number of young menstruators who emailed and thanked us for that bill, because there's still shame in talking about needing menstrual products or your menstruation, right? And that stigma needs to move away. And I think you would have chuckled when you saw me speaking about period poverty and how the male senators in the room look like, oh my God, what's Senator Jaramillo doing, right? It was so funny to see that even they see a stigma with it and feel that men, as men, we shouldn't talk about it, but we should be able to. I had one senator who said, Senator Jaramillo, isn't this the job of mothers and the job of maybe the school nurse to do? And I said, well, if you truly think that it takes a village, it's our job as well, Senator, to ensure that we are comfortable having conversations about any topic with any New Mexican when they need us the most. And so some of these students really wrote and said, thank you for saying that, and thank you for voicing up. So I want to thank you, Rebecca, for bringing light that it's sometimes being the voice for people who just feel they don't have one.
Thank you.
Okay, Mara?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Senator Jaramillo, my dear friend.
Hello.
I wanted to ask a little bit about what can be done to provide more resources for social services for the most vulnerable of our population. Your district as a whole is very troubled with the whole fentanyl issue and poverty and lack of food, and I would love to see more of more assistance for these kinds of programs. And one that I have had people contact me about is, for example, this summer there is no free school lunch for the students during the summer. Apparently, I contacted the school district, and the only response that I got was that they didn't qualify this year. So there are a lot of families, and a lot of families I know that for the last several years have lined up outside schools, whether it was Aspen or wherever it was being served from, to pick up lunches for their children. And, there was a pretty substantial meal there, and sometimes food for families that needed it other than the lunch program. So I'm using that as an example, and also the fentanyl education component here, where these social problems, they're all social problems, and some of them are interrelated. How do we get the state to provide more money? How do we end up with more facilities for behavioral health, mental health? Because some of the drug use is definitely something that can be treated at some of these facilities, and kids and others are having to go away from their community to get this help. So I'd just like to see what you have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. When it comes to social services, I think what we need to do is meet with counties and municipalities to see what are the needs within your community and your county. because not every county or community might have the same need, right? So the needs in Chama are definitely going to be different than those here in Los Alamos and those in Española. So I think then what I should do from hearing your questions and your concerns is I need to take the initiative to meet with county councils, county commissioners in every county that I represent to see what are the issues and what do you see you need help with, right? Because I need to see what they've identified as needing the help first with. Then I can piece the pieces together on whether it's an agency, if it's funding, or if we then need to create a bill to best address the issues collectively that would allow the counties and municipalities the flexibility to work on issues within their areas. So when it comes to no free lunch during the summer, that really gets me concerned. We fed students for 2 years during the pandemic. I know that a number of districts still use their bus route. Lunches were provided to students who waited at their normal pickup and drop-off spot. So what I'll do, Mara, since you brought that to my attention, is I'll work with Kendall Chavez, who does the food insecurity work for the governor, and I'll see if there's anything that can be done. And then this is something I'll also let Senator Martin Heinrich know about. He visited New Mexico 4 weeks ago to talk about the legislation both he and Senator Sanders are drafting. It's also a free breakfast lunch bill, much like the one Senator Padilla and I drafted and got passed here in New Mexico that will go nationally. And he also talked about, well, what happens during those summer months? And he addressed, we were able to feed students during the pandemic, even during those summer months. So what I'll do, Mara, is I'll work with Kendall Chavez to see if there's a plan, if there's anything that we can implement for Los Alamos Public Schools. And I'll also put it on Senator Martin Heinrich's radar that this is an issue. Now, here's something that really concerns me, Mara, is there was a time when Superintendent Guy and I were working with the state, where the state said that Los Alamos would have to eat the cost, no pun intended, of feeding every student that didn't qualify for free lunch. We worked with the state and the governor's office, and the governor's office said, no, that's absolutely wrong. The bill was passed that we will feed every student. Now, I'm tired of people thinking that just because Los Alamos has the most PhDs per capita and that the laboratories up here, that we don't have an issue. There are people in our community right here in Los Alamos who are facing food insecurity and who are facing issues even when it comes to social services, that perception of who we are as Los Alamos is one that they think, one, we have enough funding to take care of it on our own, and two, there's not that much of a need. So I'll make sure that I stand up for Los Alamos Public Schools, and we'll work with the governor's office on seeing what can be done. When it comes to fentanyl, oh, no problem. And when it comes to fentanyl, I'll be working with Amy Story. Just to recap, she found that bill from another state. Both Representative Chandler and I will be meeting with her now during the interim to see what we can do. And it will be nice to see some sort of take a bite out of crime. Do you remember that in the 80s and 90s? Some sort of campaign maybe that we can do to start educating students and parents and communities about the deadly effects of even a small dose of fentanyl. And then I'm with you when it comes to mental health and behavioral health, Mara. There's just not enough providers in the state of New Mexico. And that's a major issue. Senator Ortiz y Pino is working on how he can then try to work with local universities to increase the number of mental health providers that they're educating within the University of New Mexico School of Medicine. And so that way we can have them out in the community. There's something, I don't know, and you might know about 100% New Mexico. Have you heard about that?
Yes.
100% New Mexico, for those of you who haven't, it's an umbrella of bringing all services under one roof. And so they're really working on keeping that mental health component as one of those key areas that 100% New Mexico would need, because everybody needs to make sure that your mental health is okay. We can't just think of health as physical health, right? Did you catch a cold? Do you have flu? But how are you mentally? Are you okay today? And what can I do to help? But there's a lot of work to be done on mental health. That's just not something that can be done in 1 year or 2 years. It's going to take a while for us to really work on a plan and execute a plan, and then start to see a return on investment in future years.
Thank you, Senator.
No problem, my friend.
I think it's either O'Connor or Dave, right? Either one. Okay.
It's Dave. Leo, there's a lot of people who'd like to bicycle commute along 4. And of course, that's a state road, so it kind of falls into your bailiwick a bit. Do you know anything about whether anybody intends to do anything about that? And there've been quite a few accidents, as I'm sure you know.
And so you're talking New Mexico 4 that leads from White Rock off the hill?
Actually, both directions from White Rock, to tell the truth.
So from my understanding, when it comes to New Mexico 4, what's tricky is the easement right to the side. So the shoulder on is Pueblo land. And there's just that small section that's the county where we see that intersection where the light is, that the lanes are 4 lanes in both directions, those turn lanes. After that, it's my understanding that the shoulder on New Mexico 4 belongs to the Pueblo. So it would have to be a major agreement between the Pueblo and the state to ensure that we could then move off to the shoulder for a bike path, since it's their property. And I'd be comfortable having a conversation with Governor Moquino about if that's something he'd be interested in. It would benefit everyone, right? It would benefit everyone from the Pueblo, benefit New Mexicans, and help us get out and try to do some outdoor activities. So I'd be happy to ask that question to the Pueblo governor on your behalf.
Yeah, that there is some issue with the Pueblo along there, which I actually thought had been somewhat resolved, but that's not the issue from White Rock up the hill and Bandelier, that area at all.
Do me a favor. Here's what I'm gonna ask you to do. Send me an email that I'll forward to the NMDOT Chief of Staff. I'll say this is something I want looked into, and let's get an answer from NMDOT, just because I don't have the right one for you. I don't have one actually. But
Sure,
if you send me an email, my friend, I'd be happy to copy you and send it on to Jerry Valdez, who's the Chief of Staff of NMDOT. We can see if there's been a study done or what we need to do to get a bike path done for us.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to name it after you.
No, I don't think so.
Are there some more questions? Anybody? Just open yourself up here.
I'll tell you that one of the greatest things, Carol Ann, is to be able to stand up and advocate on behalf of Los Alamos and Española, to be able to truly, I've told you that Los Alamos is a second home at the Roundhouse, to be able to talk about not only the needs in my home valley, but to talk about the needs of Los Alamos, which is my second home. And so it's nice to hear other senators come up to me and say, it's really good to hear you advocating for Los Alamos and to hear you bring so much pride of who they are as a city, who they are as your constituents, and what they not only offer to New Mexico, but what they offer to this nation. And so it is so amazing to just be able to speak up and be a voice for Los Alamos on that Senate floor. It's been one of the honors of my life, and I am so thankful, League of Women's Voters, for having this opportunity to do that.
Well, before I call on Barbara, whose hand is up, I see it. I want to thank you, and I think I speak for all of us, for being our senator who, as I wrote in the paper even, yes, you really only represent Los Alamos, but you really take care of all of Los Alamos County. It's, you don't think, well, White Rock's not my bailiwick.
Yeah.
And I think that's to your credit, and we've loved all the feedback we get from you and the availability that you have when we ask questions or something. So
thank you.
I, on behalf of everyone, wants to thank you. And I'm going to call on Barbara up in the corner on my phone. You're in my corner, Barbara.
Nobody puts Barbara in the corner.
That's right. No one puts. Yes, you're right.
So, Senator, thank you very much for all your good work during this last session. and since then. So some of us were very active in lobbying for some of the very good bills that were presented during the session were filed. And then we were very, very disappointed when the governor vetoed some of those same bills. The tax credits for electric vehicles, for instance, and the recycling and litter reduction bill, and the small, tiny increase in the tax on alcohol. I was wondering what the chances are that the legislature can override those vetoes.
So that's something that we'll definitely be talking about in caucus. So a caucus meeting is going to be scheduled later this summer where we revisit and do a recap of the session. And I do know that those are on some of the senators' radars that we'll have a discussion. So right now there isn't a plan. What typically happens is the caucus comes together, we discuss issues such as, let's just take the alcohol tax, for example. Senator Antoinette Cedillo Lopez really was hoping this could happen because it then would increase the amount of money we could spend on alcohol awareness campaigns, trainings, going out to schools. We'll talk about these issues as a caucus and then come up with a game plan that then we'll work on executing during the upcoming session. But as of right now, there is no plan because we haven't met yet.
And can you tell us when the caucus will take place?
So all I know is that it's going to be sometime this summer. A date hasn't been set.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. Hey, Carol Ann, if there's no questions, I have something exciting to share with all of you. Are you ready?
I think you can do that, and then Jody has a question. You go first.
Okay, so Senator Peter Wirth, who's the majority leader, was able to submit the names of top performing freshmen. So those of us in our first term to be sent on to a national committee who would then look at us and see if we qualified as one of the top freshman legislators in the country. 4 of our names were sent from New Mexico. 2 were selected, including me. And so what happens is it was a application process with questions. It was a question and answer form, the legislation you carried, why you carried it, the impact it would have. And so I'm proud to say that I'm going to be one of 55 top performing legislators in the country coming together in Virginia. The second week of July, we're going to form a cohort and work on how we can start working on legislation together at the national level to give to our state senators, our state representatives that cross the party lines that will have an effect on us as Americans. And then those concepts and what I learned in those trainings, I'll bring back to the Roundhouse. And how can we bridge New Mexicans together and stop seeing labels, but start seeing issues, identifying them, and finding ways to come up for a solution. So I am so excited. It's the first time a Northern New Mexico senator has been brought into this class, and it's called the Emerging Leaders Seminar. And so I'm going to be so excited to be there and to represent all of us in Virginia.
That is terrific.
Thank
and I'm
you.
so glad Maura's here to write all that down, Maura. Because we'll be reading it in the reporter. Yes, that is great. And I'm just going to say one thing, Jody, before I call on you. One of the, I did retire in 2009 after the school year, but maybe just a feedback. The world has changed. I'm really trying to make some changes in it, but some I don't like, and I'm refusing to change. But I know that some of the people that I'm still in contact with, who are teachers, say, you know what? We don't want to put up with the parents anymore. It's not the children, it's the parents. And there's when you were discussing mental health, that's a huge, huge area. It's not just, a particular diagnosis. It's mental health of how we treat other people, how we talk about people, how, not to say that I'm perfect, by the way, but just to say in general, how we address people. And somehow that's gotten, I don't know, off course.
Oh my gosh, yes. I just read a book called Love Your Enemies, right? And it talks about the political divide in this country and how those of us here in this country are now believing if your belief isn't my belief, you've become the enemy. And I think that that's what's happening even in school settings, is it's carrying over If you're not 100% on their belief, there's something wrong with you and you become the enemy or you become the barrier. People are losing that interaction of just coming together. And there's times that you can agree to disagree, but being polite and empathetic is what we all need to do. You should read that book, and it touches on that. Maybe parents need to read the book too.
Well, yeah, and legislators, you know, I
Yes,
just think
everyone.
pervasive. There
Yep.
isn't a group. I'm not talking about.
No,
any
I know what you mean.
political, I'm talking
No,
about all of them.
well, me too. Me too, right? Because
Yeah.
every group on every side views what this book talks about is everybody sees that they just group themselves with people who are like-minded on every side, no matter on what it is, and then don't agree to disagree and just make the other side the enemy. And so it talks about even social media now with algorithms just clumps you with people who have the same thoughts that you do. And when that happens, that's detrimental because you're not opening up yourself to learning from even those who have opposing views and how you can come together to find a common ground. And so that's really scary. And those backlashes are brought up in the book a lot, just like parents who backlash at teachers now.
Well, I'm either going to go to the library or I'm going to our local bookstore to order that because I want
Yes.
her to stay in business. So I order books from her. And I wanted to say that we have about 3 minutes and Jody has her hand up. So I'm going to shut up. But I needed to say that. And Jody, you can go. Okay. There you are.
Well, that was hard to follow because I agree with everything that you and the senator said, Carol Ann, and thank you for addressing it. Thank you for reading and staying informed. And what I'm going to bring up is might sound like an us and them, and I guess it kind of is, but I'd like to ask you how the state is working with Los Alamos National Lab to have Los Alamos National Lab address all the environmental, social, cultural, infrastructure issues that they're bringing to New Mexico because of the expanded pit production. So how are they funding it aside from funding schools and things? Are they actually working with the state on these issues? Thanks.
So not that I know of. And so they could be, but I'm not part of the committees that would have that direct knowledge and information. So I'm not part of the committees that deal with the environment. My interim committees are more of education and land grant, but it's something I could definitely look into and something that maybe Representative Chandler and I should do with meeting with the government liaison of Lanel, Patrick Worley, to see what's being done. Now, if you can do me a favor and send me an email specifically on what you're looking at, those are questions I can ask him about and I can circle back.
And how do you spell Patrick Worley?
I don't know how to spell the last name, but
I know how to spell the first name.
I don't know how to spell the last name, but he does government affairs for the library.
It's WOERLE.
WOERLE. I would have never found him. Thank you very much. And I'll send you an email.
Yes, make sure that you do, because I'd be happy to ask him and then I can circle back with you.
Thank you.
Oh, but it's going to cost you. I need to know where you got that fabulous t-shirt. It reads Los Alamos with the US flag on it.
I had to win it. It's the triathlon.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm going to,
you have to come in July, I think it's the second weekend in July. You can enter.
so Jody,
That's nice
listen,
of Virginia.
my first piece on getting to that will be running the torch with the Special Olympians. Then we'll talk triathlon later.
That's good.
Yeah. So it is 1 o'clock. Well, it is 12:59 anyway. So Leo, I think some people could see you tomorrow between 3 and 4.
Yes, I will be joining you. I'll
brothers.
be at Central Park. We'll be at Central Park Square, and we're going to be doing a Pride event. I'll be sitting with my good friends. Come and say hello and take a selfie. You know, they call me the selfie king on the Senate floor.
You are
But be
good at that.
warned. Oh, you know what, Caroline? It makes me look thinner, so those selfies are a 2-win, right? Thin, and I post a picture with my friends.
I want you to
So-
take the wrinkles out for me. But okay.
Yes. I'll take them off of me, but I think you look fabulous. So come and see me, everyone. I'd love to see you. I'd love to chat with you in person, and I'd love to take a selfie with you.
Great. That would be perfect. Thank you. We'll bring an extra battery in case your phone runs out of battery.
And I have just one last thing to say.
Mhm.
Today happens to be National Smile Power Day. So I'm going to challenge all of you, when you're out and about, give a stranger a smile and let them know that you're just one nice Los Alamos resident smiling and bringing joy to this world. So I'm going to challenge all of you to do that today.
That will be great. And
Thank
thank you, Leo. We'll see you tomorrow. And thank you
Yes.
for our speaker today.
Thanks,
you.
everyone. I'll see you soon. I can't wait to see you in person.
Right. Same.
Have a
you
great
soon.
day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.